Hello, freshmen. So last week we read The Osage Orange Tree by William Stratford. And I told you this week we would do the study guide and then we would read our next story, which is called The Scarlet Ibis. But let's focus right now on this. Where did Evangeline ask the narrator to leave the newspaper? Well, if we look at the title right there, it pretty much tells us. She asked him to leave it at the foot of the tree. Now, what did the narrator think of the newspaper he was delivering? Well, let's look back and see if we can't find it. Right here. It was a poor newspaper, by the way. Cheap, sensational, unreliable. So that's our answer. He didn't think very highly of it, did he? So let's go back and we'll answer that. He thought it was a cheap newspaper, unreliable and sensational. Now, what did the narrator suggest about Evangeline's brother's personality? Now, we can go back and see if we can find that. Where is the brother mentioned? Ooh, we could do a Control F. And we just type in brother. Evangeline's brother was a janitor at school, a big dark boy. He was a man middle-aged. I thought at the time he didn't ever let on that he knew me. I would see him sweeping and I would see Evangeline take second lunches. So basically, he just thinks he's a quiet person. Or the narrator thinks that, not she. He was a quiet person that kept to himself. How does the narrator describe the people on the prairies? Well, let's go. I bet it's somewhere next. Everyone right here. Everyone, well, let me see if I can get it to highlight. Come on. Everyone was poor in a way that you can't understand. So there's our answer. Because you remember we were talking about how this took place in the 30s during the Great Depression and during the dust storms that were just rampaging the Midwest. Why did the other girls make fun of Evangeline? Well, Evangeline was one of those poor people. And they really gave her a hard time because of that, because she wore older clothes and such. God, wasn't this a good story, though? Okay, next question. Why did the narrator quit his paper route after graduation? Well, he was going on to school. Well, not really school. His father had waited for him to graduate. That's right, yeah. His father had waited for him to graduate because he was a farm equipment salesman. And they were going to move after graduation. So, we figured out that Evangeline was lying to the narrator the entire time. Her dad didn't want the newspaper, and she had used the money that she was supposed to spend on her graduation dress and bought the paper instead. So why would she do that? What would motivate her to do that? I think she liked him. She liked the narrator and she wanted to see him more. But I also think it's because the narrator didn't judge her. The narrator didn't make fun of her like the other kids did at the school. And it was probably refreshing to her. Ooh, show me one quote that suggests the narrator was content to escape notice as a new student. And I bet we can find that. Let me get rid of this thing right here. Oh, I think it's more towards the beginning. He's describing it. The next day at school. When the others were there, I wouldn't say anything. I stood with the boys and the American history students who chose their seats. Oh, the crowd was... Well, here we could do this too and see if we can't find it. Yeah, we don't want brother. That didn't help us. Okay, so some of the students didn't care, but I listened and waited. At the end of the day, I was relieved, less conspicuous from then on. So right here, our narrator's telling us he doesn't really want to be noticed that much in school. Sometimes it's easier as the new kid to ease your way into it. All right, let's go down to number 9. Ooh, we have to look at the description of her house because it says provide 3 details from the story that suggests Evangeline's home suffered from neglect. And we need to find the description of her house, which is right in here. Let me pause it and find it real quick. Here it is. Right here. So, let's just put this on our study guide. And then we can look easier. So, nothing grew there. Grew in the yard. The house was gray and lopsided. was a white place on the ground where they threw dishwater. So that gives us a pretty good idea that the house wasn't the best. Now, what lie did Evangeline tell the narrator? That her father wanted the paper. Because we know he never did want it. She just wanted to see him. And all right, now we can start the Scarlet Ibis. And that'll be part 2 of our video series for the week.